Welcome to another episode of the Ambitious Legacy Podcast. I'm your host, Sabine the Purpose Lawyer. Thank you for listening and thank you for helping me be on purpose. Welcome, everyone. So today we're going to be discussing what happens to your debt if you die. I get this question so often. So many people call me in a panic saying like, oh my God, my loved one passed away with all this debt. We don't know what to do. Or they think that they're responsible to pay the debt and they're, super overwhelmed. Just figuring out how to pick up the pieces, that's always a frustrating time. So I wanted to help people understand what happens to the debt of a person if they were to pass away. There's a lot of information out there, so I wanted to sort of make sure that you understand, right? It's not always that the surviving family members are responsible for the debt. So let's talk about specifically what's happened. Let's just dive right into it, right? So number one, debts don't simply go away when someone passes away, right? Debts are treated differently depending on where the debt is or where it's coming from, how the person acquired it. But loved ones are typically not personally responsible for paying off the debt, right? Even though the debt is going to survive the death of the person, the loved ones are not necessarily responsible for doing so, right? So who is responsible for paying off the debt if somebody was to pass away? The estate of that person. So I always talk about, estate planning, legacy planning, and I like to explain to you guys what an estate is. So an estate is basically all of the stuff that you own that is of value when you pass away, right? And it can also include your debt that you were responsible for during your lifetime. So it kind of becomes this thing that takes on a life of its own. It's like even though the individual person who was responsible is no longer here, their estate still exists, right? And so that's why your estate is there during your lifetime. It's there beyond your lifetime. It's something that continues to exist. So your estate would be responsible to pay off the debt. And what that means is that the creditors want to be made whole by either selling or charging against what you already, what you've left behind. So say if you left bank accounts behind, maybe your creditors want to get paid from that. Or you left a home or something like that behind, your creditors might want to be, paid from that. Either way, they want to be paid. And what's the interesting thing is creditors will pretend as if you are responsible, the survivors are responsible to pay the debt. So they'll send a letter saying, hey, so sorry, heard this happened to your loved one. They had this debt that is, outstanding. How do you want to handle it? And so they're not saying you're responsible to pay for it, but they're also not saying you're not responsible to pay for it, right? They just want to make sure that they get paid, so they'll take it however they can get it, essentially. But know that say you're a child of someone who passed away or another family member of someone who passed away, as long as you did not co-sign that debt, then you're not going to be responsible to repay that debt, right? If you didn't have an independent responsibility to pay that debt, then you're not going to be left responsible to pay that debt. Now, in certain states, spouses might be responsible to pay the debt. It might be considered that you are continuing because you were, if you were in a community property state, you might be still responsible to pay that debt. But you want to make sure that you checked in your local state, what is your responsibility? If it's a community property state, what is your responsibility before you go and pay debt of someone who passed away, right? So the estate, right, is going to be responsible. Now, I talked about if you are a joint debt holder, if you co-signed, that may be a different scenario. So you also want to make sure that you check what your rights are. But if you are a joint debt holder, like you jointly are required to pay back a mortgage, right? You're still, as a survivor, you would still continue to need to pay that debt, right? And typically mortgages are going to survive anyway because they are going to be attached to the property as, meaning the property is collateral for that mortgage, right? So if you don't pay that mortgage, they can foreclose, take the house. So mortgages are always going to survive. However, certain other debts, like say credit card debts or other types of loans, may not survive, right? So, but if you are a joint holder, meaning you jointly said, I will pay back this loan, right? I'm borrowing this money, I will pay back this loan, then you will be responsible to pay back the loan, even if your joint holder has passed away, or your joint debtor has passed away. Okay, so joint is a different scenario. So now let's talk about what is exempt from creditors being able to recover, right? So certain things are exempt, or yeah, that's the best way to say it. Certain things are exempt from creditors being able to recover or get their money back if the person passed away, even if they have these type of assets within their estate. So one is life insurance. So creditors will never be able to recover on your life insurance, whether it be during your lifetime or after your death, because that life insurance is going to get paid out either directly to your trust or directly to your loved ones, and the creditors will not be able to recover from that money. So you can rest assured that, say you have a lot of debt and you know that your assets are going to be used to pay off that debt, or might be used to pay off that debt, and you still want to leave something for your loved ones, life insurance might be a great way to do that, right? So you can think about that. Life insurance proceeds cannot be touched. Another thing that cannot be touched by your creditors is retirement accounts, or retirement income cannot be touched by your creditors, whether in your life or after your life. So you might want to, you can, continue to put in more money into your retirement account if you know that, this is the case and you have debt and you want to make sure that it doesn't get touched, or that your family could be supported in the event that something were to happen to you, right? Your assets that are held in trust also cannot be touched by your creditors. Now, again, there is a lot of caveats here. So again, this is information only. It's not legal advice, but I am letting you know that typically when you pass away, whether you have a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, which you can go back into some of my other videos to get the explanations on those, but whether you have one of those upon your passing, it becomes irrevocable. So generally, creditors cannot touch the assets that are in your trust because it's assigned to someone else. Again, there are situations where that can change. So I just want you to be mindful of that. Student loans, actually, when the person passes away, the student loans are distinguished. They are discharged, whether it's the parent who took out the loans, or it's the child who took out the loans. If it was for the life of the person who passed away, student loans generally will be discharged, so those don't have to be repaid. Okay, so those are the things that are exempt. So now let's talk about the things that are not exempt, that they're going to get their money. I don't care where you put this money, they are going to get their money. And that is Uncle Sam, right? Taxes will be paid come hella high water. You're going to have to pay those taxes unless your estate has no money, right? If your estate has no money at all, then the taxes might be discharged, right? Either way, it's going to be coming from the estate or whatever assets the estate has, not from the family members. Okay, so I don't want to get confused with that. But if there are assets in the estate, IRS is going to get their money, or they might settle for a lower amount, but you're going to have to have that conversation, essentially, right? They're coming. Another thing is child support. Child support still has to be paid from the estate. Different states have different rules about this, but typically child support is governed by the state laws, and so you're going to have to pay those child support dues even after death. So pay your child support, please, ladies and gentlemen. And credit card, if there is no will, or if the person dies, if the person dies without a will, or even if there is just a will in the estate, or if that's the plan that was left behind, then credit cards will generally have to be paid, but sometimes the creditors don't show up to get paid, or they may settle for a lower amount. So those are some options when it comes to credit card, right? And that's pretty much it. So long story short is that if someone passes away, The survivors, their family members, their loved ones are not personally responsible for their debt, but their estate may be responsible for their debt depending on the scenario. And there are certain types of assets that cannot be touched, like your life insurance, like your retirement accounts, and generally assets that are in your trust. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. I hope that answered all your burning questions about death, debts and dying. And, if you have more questions or you want to continue this conversation, or you want to get your estate plan done because you want to make sure that you preserve some of these assets from taxes and debts, please reach out to us, the Ambitious Legacy Firm. I will put the contact in the show notes. And if we can't help you, we'll be happy to tap you into our network, whether you need estate planning or you need financial planning or you need insurance. We have a guy or a gal. And so please reach out and we'll be happy to get you connected. Don't forget to pick up a copy of You're Richer Than You Think, which is my book that talks about all these different wonderful areas of estate planning and help you get an understanding and can help you to have these conversations with loved ones or whomever you need to educate on the topic. That would also be linked below. And I am so glad you tuned in. Don't forget to tune in next week, and I'll see you next time.